Mike, go. There he is.
Yeah, I got a picture of him. I took it to Cal, the 4-H in San Francisco.
I'm still in a kind of a whirlwind daze here from last night. It was a wonderful get-together there at Chico History Museum, where we had kind of the first round of this two-day event, and I'm trying to collect my thoughts right now. Really, I see copies of the Humboldt Wagon Road book floating around here, and that really is kind of a large part of what brings me here today. Not only just the book, but what went into the book, and I think a lot of what went into the book came out of my past and even out of my father's interest in the Humboldt Road. During his time, he collected considerable pictures and information on the road, and that really was, I think, the biggest reservoir of information and historic photographs that the co-author Marty Lester and I had when we put that book together. And so it has been really a good book. It continues to really have a draw and an interest and continues to sell around the community. I do have copies of this if anybody's interested at $23 and some cents. But so speak to me if you wish to purchase one there at all today. It's primarily just a book presenting historic photos with some captioning and a modest amount of information really on the Humboldt Wagon Road. I think, we'll talk here for just a few minutes about the Humboldt Road really beginning here. Here's the old Humboldt Road right here, Humboldt Avenue today. The junction site here right around us, this curious collage of roadways seemingly running every which way. And I think historic photos show that it was essentially the same then. Again, there are a number of historic photos here that show the old junction and the collage of businesses that were right here. And again, I think it really was simply the launching point for this new Humboldt Road. I think a lot of you were at the event last night, and that was John Bidwell's conception and reaching for a way to transport supplies and people from California now east into Nevada for the Comstock load event there. That had broken out in about 1859, and so by the mid-1860s, Bidwell has got his agricultural endeavor really coming up to full speed. A lot of produce now is pouring out of his Rancho Chico, and he is limited in what he can do with that. California is still just a really limited market right here in this general area probably, and the railroad has not reached Chico yet. And so Bidwell conceives of this road that could take supplies and people and material from California east into Nevada and into Idaho. And so investors, John Bidwell and three others, invest about $40,000 in the Humboldt Wagon Road. And they set it up as a toll road where people that would then use the road would have to pay in order to use this improved route. And the pass through the mountains would be substantially lower than the High Sierra passes, and Bidwell felt this would offer the best trans-mountain, interstate, interterritory access to Nevada. And so the road was put into place. Stagecoach lines even were begun here. 3 days between Chico here and Susanville, probably at its best, 3 days. And it did seem like the Humboldt Road really had a future as a trans-mountain roadway until the railroad really was pushed across the Sierras, 1867, 68. By then it was out into Nevada, where it would really take over as the real supply technology there for the Comstock and for that Great Basin area. So I think we'll talk later today about lumbering there at Jonesville. I'll give you a little blab on that. But really, I think that's really about enough here. I didn't formally introduce John Gallardo and Liz Stewart, who's here, Chico Heritage, and Debbie Malin and Mike Hicks and Michelle Rader really respect the walls. I did mention them last night as a rather newish type group here within the last two years, really springing up to try to gain some preservation and protection for these rock walls that really kind of cobweb, spider web all through the Chico area here on this east side of the Chico community. And we'll talk about the walls here in a minute. But Debbie and Mike and others really have formed up their group to try to gain some awareness, and then beyond that some historic preservation for the walls themselves. And we can see here on this wall that it's really been, again, people have taken a lot of rocks away from the wall there, and that has been going on for several decades there as people have just come up and parked here and loaded the rocks up to take them down to Chico probably for landscaping. And there's even some suspicion there that the commercial landscapers had been somewhat involved. Some of them possibly were involved in taking rocks from this wall particularly. So we'll talk a touch about that. But this is such a great spot here because to me you've got this wonderful combining of the past and the present, and it really just is so evocative to me of what has been and then what is, and we can all kind of stretch out a touch and wonder about what will be right here. And so certainly we see here these ruts still here, still worn down right into this volcanic bedrock here. Again, I think we're all of us are just being carried through this time of enormous technological and information change, and we are all challenged to reshape a lot of what we grew up with and the conceptions we had of the world around us, the way life works on our planet, the human story into the past. And so we're told now that this volcanic rock here, 4 to 5 million years old, volcanic vents here to the east, up Big Meadows Mineral Way there, a number of volcanic vents had oozed out a series of mud flows that went on over again a long stretch of time, possibly 1 million years of periodic mud flows. They probably were not hot, but instead a mixture of cobble and ash, and here is the result. And probably most of us have seen in a spot like Bidwell Park where you can see the layers so readily in a hillside there about how the mud flow was laid down one upon another, different composition, and so you can really see a strata built up from these mud flows. And of course right here you've got just such a shallow little bit of soil on top, and it doesn't take much to wash away or wear away this thin layer of topsoil and get right down to the bedrock, they call it. And here we can see how these ruts, these wagon ruts, were worn right down into this softer mud flow. And still today we can see hundreds, if not thousands, of wagons and what they've left behind here. And of course, what is the value of that? The ruts and the walls. Is there really a substantial value in that for us today? I think that's a question we all have to ask ourselves. Do we simply all sit down and watch that right there, just sweep across here and cover it all up? Is that what we want? Is that what best serves our human story? Is that what best serves our future there, to cover it all up and be done with it? And I think really, again, it's, to me, the value is to be able to look back and see just a time when my grandmother was born, and I knew her really well. She was alive until I was 25. She grew up in this day right here. 1880 she was born. She hadn't seen a car until she was 25 and 30. So it's been a whirlwind of change, and we are even accelerating that now. And we should be asking ourselves, how do we meet that? How do we best meet that? And so I think these reminders are important for us. These gauges of time that we can use to look back and see what has been a little bit, and then ask ourselves, well, what do we want to save? What is important for us to save, to show a little bit of respect for what has been in the past, and to try to help us better navigate the present. So again, you can see this right down here, and I think this is so, for me, I don't like it. And I have tried to resist it my whole, I don't like it! I tried to resist this my whole adult life. Tried to stand up against this rapid scale development, they call it. And we can all see and all understand at this point in our lives that, you know, you can look at a specific development, yeah, okay, we'll shift this, change this, yeah, not here, over here. But really, over time, it just has moved on. Not much has slowed it down. Chico is in another growth stretch right now where it's just changing so quickly, and really only a minimum of attention and concern is given to the impacts on our human world and on the natural world itself. And what is this long-term result going to be? I think we all can see more clearly right now about changing climate? What? And yet, our science tells us that probably is happening. And that should be a monster source of concern for us. Doesn't seem to be. But again, that's a little blab on why I think this spot is important, and how could we take any steps to not only protect the ruts and the walls, but the feeling of this, whatever happened here in the past. We can all guess, if you got houses right there, and houses right there, an arterial crossing here and this way, it's all, you go, wow, what the heck? I can't see much in the past out of that little bit that's left. What could happen here? I don't know. But it would be neat for this roadway, which is an artifact in itself, even though it's been paved over, and it was the single way out of Chico in my early lifetime. The twisty, turny, contour following route that you just take here over this 5-mile stretch is again a nifty deal at looking back and seeing the difference between this and the highway right over there, and the kind of vehicles that navigated that old road, and the feel one gets. And is there a difference between what you see out your window, you know, as you kind of go slow up here, as opposed to 60 and 70 over there? Don't know. But here you got a nice, well, is it nice? It's the old road, and it's an artifact in itself. So possibly, is there any chance that this whole stretch could again be preserved as some look back and a recreational spot for today, and a way to give ourselves into the future, a place to get into the outside world, and to look back again still and see what has been. So that's kind of my little blab. And we have several people I think that I would like to hear from today. I think certainly Debbie Malin, wherever there she is right there. I'd like to hear what she's got to say about the walls. And Michelle Rader here, who has been involved in the effort to move the process of gaining some recognition and protection and preservation for the walls through the established federal and state. Touch on that a minute?
Yes, well, when I first got involved in this, I was working on a school project with, at Chico State. It was visual anthropology, and we were working on a documentary film, and this was in spring of 2016, and that's how I met the Respect the Walls group and got involved with them, and as well as with Dave. If any of you are familiar with Dave's book, that was one of our key resources, his great book, he and Marty Leister's book. But we did some research into the old Humboldt wagon road, and we put together a documentary film. It's actually not quite complete. It has a little final editing still to do. But anyway, I got to know some of what went on in previous years. Back in early 2000s, there was a man named Francis Farley, who kind of took up the cause for the Humboldt wagon road. He wanted to preserve the wagon ruts and the walls as well, and so he working with a graduate student at Chico State, Anita Chang, he gathered up materials and information and put it together, and then handed it over to the city of Chico, thinking they would move with it in order to put it on the historic resources inventory list, which did not happen. Those things just kind of got lost in the shuffle. So we are trying to kind of bring that back and get some recognition for this stretch of old roadway and the wagon ruts. You know, those wagon ruts are such a great example that you don't see easily in California. There are plenty of them farther east of us, and even some, I believe, in Oregon. But most of the wagon ruts in California are way off the beaten path, and they're difficult to get to. These, you know, they're right here, right outside of town, and yet so many people don't know what they are. They don't even realize they're here. And so they don't get the respect that they deserve. So we're working to change that. And along with that is also, you know, Anita Chang had written her thesis on the wagon road, and it's available at the library, and there's also some abbreviated versions in print. And there's Dave's book on the Humboldt wagon road, and there are a couple books in the works, which I'm really excited about, that our folks with Anchor are working on one. There's Andy Mark from Forest Ranch. He's working on another, and so I'm look for those.
Yep.
Probably the beginning of next year, we may have 2 wonderful books coming out on the Humboldt wagon road, and hopefully at the same time we'll start getting some real protection here. The wagon ruts have actually been determined eligible for being listed on the National Register, and therefore they would be eligible for the state as well. But they haven't actually gone through the formal nomination process. So we're right now trying to work with the city of Chico, and unfortunately some of those folks in the council right now, they're pretty conservative, and so they prefer that the landowners along here at the very least acquiesce to the process. So we're having to work on putting together a package showing them the benefits to them allowing it to be put on the historic resources inventory, and so we're working on that.
And I would say that these walls here are, again, just like the ruts, really a prominent part of what the east side of Chico has all been about. And they've been there my entire lifetime, all of our lifetimes there. As a young person, they were kind of blanket termed the Chinese walls. Yeah, there's the Chinese walls. Then it wasn't until the 1970s and 80s when I think more than anyone, Larry Richardson stepped forward as a member of that Richardson family, the Thomasons, the Bruces, the Richardsons, and Larry's family had been involved in making the walls. And he stepped forward, and I think it was Larry who said, no, they're not Chinese walls. They were not built by the Chinese. There were several prominent, I believe, Azorian, Basque, stonemason families right here in Chico who really did the laying of the rock into the walls there. These people had come over from the Azores Islands, where there's a similar setup of rocks on the top of the surface, and people there long ago had cleared the land, moved the rocks, and created boundary lines and fences there just to get the rocks kind of piled up in one spot and delineate boundary markers there. So these two families provided the real expertise for laying those rocks into walls. And you think, yeah, just, you know, you get up there and you take the rock, you kind of throw it up there and they'll stay. No, these were really laid in there beautifully. And if you look at a profile of the walls, they're really wide there at the base. Actually, you got kind of 2 strips to start the base. A stack here and a stack here, and then you fill in between the 2 strips there with some looser rock, and you start to slowly taper it and bring it up until you had a beautiful wall there that could be up here to chest high.
Okay, we can move on up to Hot Springs and talk some more there.
Let's do that. So we're going to go ahead and move on up this road. Coming from there to here, again, I didn't mention down below that I really like what Debbie Malin and Mike and Respect the Walls and others now have done along this whole section of the road. They've been up here, they've organized cleanups, they've been up here themselves there, or in just 2s and 3s, and they've cleaned up. this old section of the Humboldt Road. And that is really a commendable accomplishment, and I really like it. I've been cleaning up garbage in Chico for nearly 50 years now. As a young adult, I thought that was a way I could contribute, and I've done my share. I don't like garbage scattered about in the world, and I really appreciate what's been done here along this whole stretch of road. And that's going to go forward. And Debbie and Mike and the Respect the Walls are always looking for people to be involved. I know they've got their little website, and you can find out about when they're going to be out here. And they're actively looking for people to come out and help with this ongoing task of keeping this little spot picked up. And again, anybody who used to come up this section of the road 20 and 30 and 40 years ago knows it turned into a dumping ground. Just a dumping ground. After the landfill, actually it was not a landfill. The city dump was closed, and I'm going to guess 1960, the late 60s, the stench from burning the garbage, the Chico garbage there, now was drifting into new development there on the east perimeter of Chico, so it was closed, and the new county landfill was opened there on Neal Road. And so after that, people who didn't want to go clear out to Neal Road, just go and dump out there along the Humboldt Road. And so it's been great to see what's been accomplished there in a pretty short period of time. Not only have they got it cleaned up, but they've shifted the whole awareness and the kind of atmosphere along this road here, where I think people now are aware, yeah, we just can't go and do that. Somebody's watching. So that's been great. Really appreciate it. Really respect it. Really respect that. Again, thanks to Mike and to Michelle Rader for getting the wagon wheel out here. And we probably should have featured that a little bit more. I didn't quite understand how that really fits into the storyline, and it illustrates there how those ruts came to be. And again, we can all kind of wonder about what it took to make a wheel like that, the skill set of being a wheelwright, and maintaining those wheels in a functioning way out here along the road, and the compromise of shifting weather and wear and tear. And we all just only know these machine-made wheels that we all buzz around on, and it's really a different world there. Hog Springs. And well, that's a good question. And Mike, do we really know about that?
The spring's over here,
Yep.
and the trough is there,
Yep.
and it doesn't look like enough fault, but they say the pipe goes under the road, and it would gravity feed and fill
like
that
okay.
trough.
Oh, yeah.
And then, I don't know if you can see down below, there's stock ponds, so the extra
Okay.
water would just flow down the hill and get caught into the stock ponds for the cattle. This was for the horses using the road.
And you can still drop a rock in there and hear the splash. There's standing water in there underneath the big covering slab that somebody put in there who knows when. And again, the watering trough here on this side there is again really quite a landmark on the old road. So we can all appreciate there at a time when your animals had to bring you up and down the road there, the importance of water. And so where water was available, you're probably going to have a stopping point. And this was the first spot pulling out of Chico here for some 5 and 6 miles. A steep uphill pull here. Quite an elevation gain out of that junction where we met this morning, right up to here. So we're still not sure about whether there were buildings and really an overnight kind of availability here at Hog Springs. And why hog springs? We're told that some pigs had gone wild here in the general region, and they like to come in here to get water and root around in here. Hog springs. Was there a building here? That's still unclear. Many accounts say no, there was simply water available here. But other accounts do indicate that there was an ongoing concession here with someone selling food and other supplies, and that there was a structure here, and that there was a woman born here, a baby born here, that would grow up in Forest Ranch and always say, yeah, I was born at Hog Springs there. My mother took me there when she was ready to give birth, and we went to her sister's house, and that's where I was born. So, don't know. Well, of course, these are the beautiful California blue oak, and it's strictly a foothill oak. They do have a rather blue cast if you catch them just right. The look of their leaves there, again, they're a fabulous plant that are able to survive and carry on their livelihood right here in this environment. Most of their growth happens in a very short period of time, from about December through March, April, and then they shut down. And their leaves have a thick coating of wax that really limits the evaporation of moisture away from their leaves and helps the plant survive out here in this environment. Wes Dempsey, the famous Chico plant champion, a native plant champion, claimed that the little twigs, just a twig there that long on the blue oak, could be 10 and 15 years old, where the tree grows very slowly there. So these trees really are the real exposed hillside oak. You'll find other oaks down in the bottom of the ravines there where there's a little bit more water down there. The evergreen live oak, interior live oak, the canyon oak, but the blue oak here.
Yeah, they started that first phase down below, and they have plans to move along up